Unrest in the Middle East is nothing new, but always disturbing. And the latest round of, troubles between the Israelis and the Palestinians is very noteworthy. And we are fortunate enough to have ABC News' Aaron Katersky live from Jerusalem joining us. McGraw Live in the morning. Good morning, Aaron Katersky.
Scott, good morning. On a day in which the escalation only seems to continue here, more than 1,000 targets have now been hit by the Israelis in Gaza, and it has come at quite a price. More than 100 Palestinians have been killed. Palestinian Health Ministry says the death toll includes about a quarter of those who are under 16 years old, the youngest victim 18 months old. So the human toll is quite significant. On the Israeli side, no casualties to report, very few injuries even, but a significant threat from rockets that are routinely launched from Gaza. 4, 5, 6 times a day, many Israelis find themselves rushing for cover in a shelter or somewhere they can be safe from the fire.
Aaron, back us up a little bit and sort of take us through how we got where we are now. This seems to be related to those Israeli students that were kidnapped and rockets that were being fired. Sort of get us up to speed on how we got to the point that we're at now.
Well, the deaths of those Israeli teenagers was certainly part of it, but it was preceded by a couple of other developments, the breakdown of American-brokered peace talks and the formation of a unity government between Hamas and Fatah, which is Mahmoud Abbas's movement. And that, in a sense, kind of undermined the central argument for Israel not coming to the negotiating table, which was there's no one to talk to. Can't talk to Hamas, and Fatah's only part of the Palestinian equation. But now that they're together, that forced Prime Minister Netanyahu's hand. And Hamas says one of its conditions for ending these latest hostilities is to stop Israel from butting into that unity government and stop messing with it and really returning to the negotiating table. Hamas also wants prisoners released. It wants the airstrikes to stop, and it wants the siege of Gaza lifted.
What happened on the Palestinian side? It seems as though there's almost two Palestines that they're trying to create. There's a Gaza, and then there's a West Bank. What is the sort of political play as to why the Gaza Strip seems to be a place of such hostility and in a place where you can't really seem to get any movement towards peace?
Well, it's controlled by Hamas, which the U.S. has designated as a terrorist group, and whose stated mission is resistance to Israel. So there really wasn't anywhere for Israel to talk in that regard. And they felt like if they talked to Fatah, they were only talking to half of Palestine. So the unity government really kind of undermined that theory, and that's why the Palestinians are anxious for that to stay intact, so that it almost forces the Israelis to negotiate. I
have some friends, Aaron, that were just in Israel, and they were in Tel Aviv when some of the rockets were sent into Israel from the Gaza Strip. What's the sense of the Israelis on this latest round of attacks? Obviously it was very disturbing to my friends that are Americans, but how does the average Israeli take this latest round of attacks?
Yeah, I think for if you're not used to the air raid sirens and ducking into shelters, then it's a scary proposition. But over the last 4 days, especially, it's become routine. And we were in Ashdod, the southern port city, when there were air raid sirens, and watched as a father hit the deck with his son, a boy of about 7 years old, I'd guess, and they hid under a tree with the father covering his boy with his own body. And I talked to them afterwards, and the boy really didn't look terribly bothered by all of this, and the father said he has come to understand the air raid sirens, the no shame in hitting the ground, the booms that you listen for to see if the missile defense system known as Iron Dome intercepted anything, and then the all clear is given. And he said even a boy of 7 has come to understand those things in the last 4 days.
And it's interesting that you say that you talked to them afterward. You were there too. You are a journalist, but you're also in the line of fire while this is happening. What's it like for you to be to experience these kinds of rocket attacks?
Well, very similar to what it's like for anybody. Siren goes off, you run for cover. and then you watch the sky for the booms and the smoke puffs and contrails from the Iron Dome system, and then you go on about your day, and it's kind of an odd routine. On the Palestinian side, of course, there is no such Iron Dome system, and so they're far more vulnerable. There have been more than 100 Palestinians killed, and real outrage in the Gaza Street over what it considers to be an unfair bombardment by the Israelis.
A terrible loss of life when there ever is a loss of life, especially when it's young people. Many of them, they're caught in the crossfire. They live in a place where a block away or right down the street there might be a Hamas operative, and they have nothing to do with it, or they may be affiliated in some way. What is the sense of what Israel's latest round of air attacks, targeted as they may be, is having on the long-term sort of goal of getting peace between these two people?
Well, it's a funny way to forge peace through war. We're not sure that a ceasefire is coming quickly here. There's there's some talk now. There's more pressure at the United Nations over the killing of women and children in Gaza. But Prime Minister Netanyahu says a ceasefire is not even on the agenda right now. And even as the U.S. and Egypt and Qatar start to talk that way, it doesn't seem like it's imminent. Only further escalation, with Hamas saying more rockets are headed toward Ben Gurion Airport, and the Israelis saying that airstrikes can continue as long as there are targets to hit. Troops are massed on the border for a potential ground invasion, though one doesn't necessarily look imminent. It's hard to see the end game here, but Israel says it wants to stop the ability for rockets to be launched into its communities. And Hamas has a set of conditions that it's looking for as well, including the lifting of a siege around Gaza, the freedom of prisoners, and some other things to try and make that a more viable place to live.
The president has offered some help in trying to negotiate some sort of ceasefire. You've already told us, Aaron, that there's really nothing in Prime Minister Netanyahu's agenda to address that. What's the relationship between Netanyahu and President Obama? It's always been tenuous, but what is it right now?
Well, it has been somewhat tenuous. The Netanyahu, in a sense, took on Obama a little bit and was unsuccessful in getting movement for what he wanted. But now he seems to have worked hard to get President Obama to call him yesterday, and the president made an offer to negotiate a ceasefire, probably with the Egyptians doing most of the talking. But the offer was there, and what the U.S. is really hoping to avoid is an Israeli ground incursion into Gaza. It seems as if the president said as much, that he would support Israel's right to defend itself through these airstrikes, but a ground offensive is something the U.S. is looking to avoid.
Aaron Katersky, have you had any opportunity to talk to Palestinian Israelis that are Palestinian by birth, not Jewish by religion, and the idea that they at some point are going to get their own country but don't have it yet, about their thoughts about this latest setback and towards that goal of having their own independent and autonomous country?
Well, it remains a goal and maybe something of a dream. Then it's not really there yet, is it? As long as both sides are dug in and making threats, and people are being killed and there are reprisal attacks, it all sort of remains elusive. With the latest round of American brokered peace talks, having broke down several weeks ago, the prospects are not there to match whatever hopes are still out there. And at the moment, the focus on the Palestinian side is burying dead from this latest bombardment, and the focus here in Israel is getting the rocket attacks to stop. And those very small goals come before any larger scale change of statehood.
It seems such a simple solution, such a complex place full of personalities, religions, ethnicities, histories. It's just a place that seems as though it can't get out of its own way to get what needs to be done, which is a two-state solution. It just doesn't ever seem to get done.
Who knows if it'll ever get done? There are some who say it'll never happen in their lifetime. There are those more hopeful. You have a lot of young people who are perhaps freeing themselves of older generations' ways, but yet when this kind of thing happens for the mainly young, mainly unemployed population of Gaza, the fear is this only creates more extremists. So it's really hard to see the end game through all of this.
Aaron Katersky, calling live from Jerusalem. Stay safe, my friend, and thank you for the update and the report.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. There you go. ABC's Aaron Katersky, right there in the heat of what is a latest battle between Palestinians and Israelis. Nothing new, but always disturbing, and hopefully will be resolved, at least if not soon, someday. Take ourselves a break. More McGraw